Well, hello there. Today we're going to talk about another highly requested topic on my channel, especially after I made my keybind guide a while ago. I'll show you some simple tweaks to your user interface that are going to make it much easier to play the game. And additionally, I'm going to show you how to set up this neat little macro, which will let you hide hotbars on screen on demand, so you can hide all of the action buttons that you don't want on display all of the time. At first glance, you'll notice that my user interface isn't actually all that different from the default UI. And that's because largely, outside of a few of these, which we're going to move around a little bit, I think the placement of them is actually pretty good in the default version of the game. There are a few things that I would highly recommend you move around just to make them more visible, which will really help you in endgame content in 14. The first thing here is the progress bar. This is whatever the boss is casting, and by default it is right next to the target bar and kind of microscopic. So ideally, you should move it somewhere where you'll notice it very easily. The way you do that is go into System, HUD Layout, select your target bar up here, and then select this tiny cogwheel, which will let you select this button right here to display the three elements independently, those being the HP, the status, as well as the progress bar. Before you get out now in the same menu, increase the size of the progress bar. I like to have it at about 160% just to make it more visible, and then just move it anywhere where it's very noticeable. I like to have it just above my character. The other thing that's kind of out of the way in the default UI that should really be front and center is the enfeeblements as well as the enhancements. So these are just buffs and debuffs. I really don't know why they decided to cram this at the top of the screen, because it's incredibly important for various fights, seeing whatever debuff is on you, and also being able to distinguish between different icons. Basically every fight has at least one mechanic where you need to take a look at your debuffs, so make sure you move this into a location where you'll notice it. So just grab your enfeeblements and move them somewhere to the center of the screen. I like to have it like slightly to the right side of my character. And then again, you can click the cogwheel and make the UI element a little bit bigger. The other thing that we want more prominent on our screen is the enhancements, and these can actually be split up into two different types of enhancements, the conditional enhancements as well as the regular enhancements. If you click on the cogwheel again, you can split these into 4 elements instead. Conditional enhancements all have to do with how you play your job. These are basically like procs that alter the way you play or enable you to use certain abilities. For example, on Warrior it will show you the remaining time left on Primal Rend. On Red Mage, for example, it'll show you if you have Dual Cast up, and on Sage it will show you if you're using Eucrasia at the moment. I moved the conditional enhancements to the left side of my character, and then I keep the enhancements at 120% size right above my hotbars. Outside of making these crucial UI elements more visible, I really don't think it matters where you put anything else. For the party bar, some people like to move it further to the center so they can click on it more easily if they're playing healers and notice if people have low HP. I know many tanks like to keep the enmity list closer to their hotbars so they can see it more easily and check if they have all of the aggro. And your drop gauges should also be fairly visible. Another tip for the drop gauges is that all of them have a simple mode as well, which often makes it a bit easier to track what's going on. Basically, just click on them in the HUD layout and then click the cogwheel and select switch to simple mode. Another useful tweak many players go for is actually moving the minimap down next to their hotbars or like between the hotbars. The reason for that is the waymarks. In high-end fights, many players use waymarks to navigate around. And especially in ultimates, they're often used for callouts for movement. So having the minimap somewhere close to where you're already looking can make orientation a little bit easier. Next, we'll go over some more super useful settings that you'll find in the depths of 14's user interface. But first, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsors of today's video, Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. Both companies deliver boxes full of Japanese snacks to you, allowing you to experience Japan from the comfort of your own home. The box from Tokyo Treat contains 20 exclusive seasonal snacks that are only available in Japan, and the Sakura Co box contains snacks that support local Japanese snack makers and focuses on traditional and artisan Japanese snacks. Each box has a monthly theme and comes with a booklet containing information about the snacks and various interesting facts about Japanese culture. Both of the boxes this month were Valentine's Day themed and contained various snacks celebrating the occasion. One of my favorite items inside of the Tokyo Treat box were these tomato chips, which were slightly spicy. Inside of the Sakura Co box, I'm always a big fan of the different pastries, and this time it contained this huge chocolate Danish that was delicious. I personally love the idea behind these boxes and the fact that they have a different theme and look every single month. So if you want to get your own box or send it to someone else as a gift, especially during the Valentine's season, please use the links in the description as well as code JOLSON for $5 off your first Sakura Co and Tokyo Treat box. Thanks to Sakura Co and Tokyo Treat for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to 14. One tweak that I highly recommend going for is removing pop-up text. These are basically just the damage numbers of other people in the background. You can find this in character configuration, UI settings, and then at the top select HUD. Here you'll find a checkbox, display pop-up text. Simply uncheck this and the damage numbers will be gone, which makes everything a little bit less distracting. If you scroll down here, you'll also find a checkbox for display target's remaining HP percentage, which will just show a percentage health number next to the target's HP, which can be super useful. Inside of the party list tab, I would highly recommend that you untick hide party list when solo, meaning you're going to be able to see yourself in a party in the top left whenever you're out exploring. The main reason you'll want to do that is because it lets you see shields on yourself. This can be useful in places like Eureka, where unless you see your party list, you're not even going to be able to see how much of a barrier you have on yourself, because somehow they still haven't added that to the parameter bar. Below that you'll also find the status effect icon display maximum, which by default is set to 5, so this will just limit the amount of status icons shown for each player to 5. I recommend upping this to 10 if you have the display space available, because there were many situations where I was looking for a buff on a player only to realize that it was actually not shown because of the limit. Next up, move to display name settings and then general. Some of these settings were only added in this expansion, so if you haven't played for a while or haven't checked the settings in a long time, then you might not even have noticed that these exist now. At the top you can now display whatever class or job someone is. You have two different icons available, and I personally don't use it because I don't really care what job someone is playing specifically. What I do care about is the role, which you can also find below. By checking apply colors according to role, you'll now be able to tell who's a tank, a healer, or a DPS at a glance. This can be great because many of 14's mechanics are actually role-based. It's also useful to just be able to stay away from tanks in case they get cleaved, or to be able to stand close to your healers in case you want to use AoE heals. Inside of the log settings at the bottom in the General tab, I recommend unchecking Display Recast Timer Error Messages. This will remove the annoying message whenever you're spamming buttons that are still on cooldown. Some people uncheck Display Error Messages when actions fail, which basically also includes the Recast Timer Error Messages. However, I actually like having these up because they will show if, for example, you're not in range. Next, on the left in the hotbar settings, select display up here, and then I like to change the recast timer position to centered because it's a bit easier to see. This will simply change the way that the recast timer is displayed on your abilities, and I find the centered version to be a bit easier to see. The next one is a bit of personal preference and depends on whether you use the hotbar cycling button, which is this one right here, to get to other hotbars. I personally never make use of that, and in that case you can simply uncheck enable hotbar cycling button. And because of the same reason, I also uncheck display hotbar numbers because I don't really need them on screen. The last tip that I have is for rescaling UI elements. Most of you will already know that you can right click on Windows and then select Scale Window and simply select a larger size to make it more visible on your screen. This also works for the chat window or, for example, your character screen to be able to inspect glams. However, one thing that's seemingly impossible to resize is the action tooltips and the item descriptions. With a little workaround, that's actually very possible though. Simply go into your UI settings, General, scroll down, and then you'll find the display action held position to fixed, which we need to actually change the size of this UI element. Once you have it in fixed position, you can go into your HUD layout and then change the UI element size from here. After you're done changing it, you can then go back into the menu and attach it to the cursor again if you want to. And as you can see, it actually carries over the new size of the UI element, even if it's now next to the cursor. This is going to be super useful for the next expansion whenever we'll have to reread all of the abilities and also to read item descriptions and so on. Lastly, I want to show you how to configure this hotbar setup, which will let you hide action buttons that you don't need on screen. For example, I use it to hide all of the buttons that I use to change jobs. I have various mounts on there, consumables, and so on. This is actually super easy to do, and the macros will all be in the video description. First of all, you'll need one main hotbar. In my case, that's hotbar 4. I've aligned it vertically like this, and then I've aligned all of the other hotbars that I want to hide horizontally so they align with the buttons on the vertical main hotbar. Take note of the hotbar numbers because we'll need them to configure the macro to work for us. This right here is the main macro, and as you can see, it's really simple. /hotbar display 4 will simply hide and show the main hotbar. You'll want to change the number to whatever hotbar you're using as your main hotbar. All the other lines are simply there to hide all of the other hotbars whenever I press my main keybind. So here you'll simply add all of the other hotbars that you're adding to this setup. And after that, every single one of the other macros is simply /hotbar display and then the number of the hotbar that's right next to it, aligned horizontally. So if we go back into the HUD layout, you'll see that the DPS button is aligned with Hotbar 5, the tank button with Hotbar 6, and so on. You can then change the icon by clicking up here and give it a name to be able to distinguish them more easily, and then simply move all of your actions onto the hotbar. So now your main macro will be used to just show your main hotbar, and all of the other hotbars can be accessed by clicking on the corresponding macro next to the hotbar that you want to show. At this point, you'll simply want to keybind the main macro to any button that you want, and I simply keep this on the main hotbar. So this way you can keep a neat little user interface and it's not difficult to set up at all. And these were actually all the tips for now. If you found this video helpful, please leave a like because it helps other people find it too. For now, thanks for watching, and I hope I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.